would have lots of different versions.
From the footnote.
Oh.
This is gonna fit one that's
Lots of stuff.
James, that was my aunt's, and I have let's see, I have a smaller, and I have one like that one over there. But that's
Not sure. Come on. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, we're on. We are on 120. 120. 120. Yeah. Okay, there we go. She's been watching online, or she may not be online while we're on, but she's been watching. So she messaged me this morning that they had ice out where she was, and so she wasn't going to come this morning. Yeah, we do need to get Christy coming back. That's a good thing. Okay, so we are on Daniel chapter 1, and last time you'll remember we learned about the fact that they took these younger men. They've taken pretty much all the elite of the country to Babylon, and then the Babylonian government took some of the young men that were Jewish men, young men, and they took them and put them in the palace, and they're going to train them to be officials in the government, that kind of thing. And we know that there are 4 of them. There's Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And we know that Daniel becomes, and it's interesting because I don't think they ever use the name Belshazzar is Daniel, but I don't know that he's ever called that in here. But then the others are called Meshach and Abednego, and those we do know they are because that's the name we know them by. So, and then we did the first story, which is the story of Daniel not wanting to eat the king's food, that he wants to. He doesn't, or drink the king's wine. He wants to eat vegetables and drink water, and he does it for 10 days, and he's better off. And so they let him, and I think the other guys as well. So they let them do that, so that's sort of the first story that we have. There's, I think I said that there's like 6 stories and 4 visions, something like that. So that's kind of one of the stories. Okay, so then in verse 20, that's where we'll start tonight. In every matter of wisdom and understanding concerning which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all and enchanters in his whole kingdom. I'm gonna wait on 21. So might stand merely as names for court sages whose learning and wisdom were surpassed by that divinely given to Daniel and his friends. So they probably weren't magicians and enchanters the way we would maybe think of those words today. They are more his people that gave him advice and supposedly wise and all of that, but they were nowhere near as Daniel and the other 3. It says they were 10 times better, which it's pretty good if you're 10 times better than the other guy. This is also just to throw something in, and I think I talked about this last year, not this last Christmas, but before. There are people that believe that there were Jewish people like Daniel, not necessarily Daniel, but perhaps Daniel 4, but others as well. That when the people of Israel came back to Israel from Babylon, that there might have been these advisors that stay, and that they are in Babylon or in that area, whatever the country, for long time, and that when Christ is, and you have the coming of the wise men, that they're not just some random and magi or wise, weren't in some way related to that. So it might have been. And then we hear it said, and Daniel continued there until the king Cyrus. That's verse 21. My commentary points out that does not. It's written and it's translated to say, to make it sound like he stopped then, but that's not necessarily true. That most scholars think that he continued on. It's just that in that early part of King Cyrus is when they sent the Jews back to Israel, and so he's in the court from the time of Nebuchadnezzar until Cyrus, and Cyrus will be once the Babylonians have, well, not so much saying that he's only there to the end of the first year of Cyrus, but he's there through the rest of Nebuchadnezzar into Cyrus, and then the people go back, and then we don't know for sure.
This says Daniel spent about 70 years in Babylonia and was still living in the year 537. Return of some of the exiles to Judah from Babylonian captivity.
Mm-hmm. Right, but not necessarily he himself. It doesn't, we shouldn't interpret that to mean that he came back, but that he was there he may have been one giving advice to the king that's what he should do.
He's an old guy, really.
Yes. Yeah.
I get the idea it was.
He started young, but he's good. So, if I was the king and I had somebody that was giving me good advice, I'd keep him. I wouldn't get rid of him. Okay, so now chapter 2. Now we move into one of the dream. This is one of the dream sequence, not dream sequence, but it involves a dream and interpretation of dreams. And that's one of the things that Daniel is known. The other guys get literature and wisdom, but Daniel also gets dreams and visions interpretation, which is a kind of a unique skill. Okay, right? Mine has a little footnote that says, and this is about 4 through 11, it says cuneiform tablets, which cuneiform is a type of writing, Middle Eastern writing from like Samaria and these places. Cuneiform tablets on divination through dreams are still extant. They still exist. If the king would tell the dream, they could consult dream books and find the interpretation, so that there were sort of cheat books on how to interpret dreams for dummies, kind of thing. Cliff notes, that's right. But asking them to tell the dream itself was unheard of and was difficult beyond human skill. Okay, so that there were that kind of explains that in their mind they could interpret the dream because they had the books to be able to do that. Okay, so he has this dream. And Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel said, "Blessed be the name of God from age to age, for wisdom and power are his. He changes times and seasons, deposes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. To you, O God of my ancestors, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and power, and have now revealed to me what we ask of you. For you have revealed to us what the king ordered." Okay, so this is sort of, and it's written, mine's written as sort of it's in a different way. Yours is too. So that it's kind of like it's like a poem, right? Like a poem. And I don't know whether he would have, if it would have been like a song or just a poem. I don't know, but it's written in poetic form. Okay, but the main thing is that he's grateful to God because God has all this ability, and he's given him all this wisdom, and more importantly, he has actually revealed the dream and the interpretation and it says to us, right? Not to me, but to us, so that so that it may be part of it was revealed to one of the other guys and part to Daniel. I don't know, but but it's revealed. It says to us. Does yours say
Mine says to Daniel.
to Daniel? Okay, so mine says us, but I don't know whether that's
This says,
okay. It's one of those. Sometimes it translating these kinds of things, that kind of thing does not necessarily the whether it's me or us is not always clear. So, but either way, to them, they've gotten the word. Therefore, Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. It's gone from execute to destroy. It's supposed to destroy them. And said to him, do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will give the king the interpretation. So he's like, I've got it. It's in the bag. Don't kill anybody yet. Take me in, and I'll take care of it. Then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and said to him, I have found among the exiles from Judah a man who can tell the king the interpretation. Now, at that point, that Arioch is kind of tooting his own horn. Notice that? I have found this guy. No, he didn't find him. Daniel went to him, right? He was already there. He was already considered one of the wise men, right? He makes it like I went beating the bushes among all the people that are in exile and found this guy. No, that's not what happened. But he kind of toots his own horn, right? The king then says to Daniel, whose name was Balthazar, the dream that I have seen and its interpretation. Daniel answered the king, no wise men, enchanters, magicians, or diviners can show to the king the mystery that the king is asking. Now, I see this as being very dramatic. You know, he does this whole no man can show the king this, and then there's a long pause, and Nebuchadnezzar is getting upset because he's just told him that nobody can give him, and then he says, but there was that long, and then but there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has disclosed to King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen at the end of days. So in other words, what Daniel's really saying is, I personally cannot, I couldn't do this. This isn't me. This is God. This is the God of the Jews, Yahweh in heaven, who can reveal this mystery. And it's interesting. It's not he has disclosed to me so that I can tell Nebuchadnezzar. He even cuts himself completely out of it. He says he has disclosed, he being God, has disclosed to King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen at the end of days. And end of days that's a reference to like the end of time. So the dream is about end time things. It's not about, this is not something that's going to happen right now. This is a dream about something that's going to happen at the end of time, right? Is the way it's being given. So it goes on. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed were these. So here's the dream. To you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts of what would be hereafter. And the revealer of mysteries disclosed to you what is to be. So this vision, this dream that you have, is a dream from God to tell you and disclose to you what is going to happen, what is to be, right? Similar to John, the vision of John. I mean, this is a part of that. Some of this dream is considered part of sort of the end time stuff. And so, even though it's happening hundreds of years before John would have ever written, it's that same kind of thing. But God has given it. This is what he's given. He's disclosing to you what it's going to be. But as for me, this mystery has not been revealed to me because of any wisdom that I have more than any other living being. I'm not any, I know what it is, but it's not because I'm any better or any wiser or anything than anybody else. But it's been given to me in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, and that you may understand the thoughts of your mind. So it's kind of setting it up that this is not normal. I don't know this because I'm not tooting my own. I'm not telling you I can, I know all this stuff on my own. That's not where it comes from. It comes from God, and it's given so that you may get the interpretation and then have kind of that peace of mind, I guess is what he's saying. Okay, so now he's going to tell him the dream. You were looking, O king, and lo, there was a great statue. Now, the commentary I read actually referred to it as a colossus, a huge, I mean, not just a normal size, but a huge statue, right? This huge statue. The statue was huge. Okay, sorry if I'd have gone on and read that a little bit, that would have helped. Its brilliance extraordinary. So it's not like a statue that's weathered and dull and all. It's brilliant, right? It's shiny and new looking. It was standing before you, and its appearance was frightening. So this is a statue that is frightening in appearance. The head of that statue was of fine gold. So golden head. Its chest and arms are of silver. Its middle and thighs of bronze. So everything, all of the middle and the thighs are bronze. It said the chest. So everything, sort of the stomach down to the knees, is bronze, right? Everything from the stomach up to the head.
Belly and thighs.
Belly and thighs. Okay, so it's sort of gold, silver, bronze, right? And legs of its legs of iron. So from the knee down is iron. Its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. So maybe the back, like the heel, would be iron, but the front part of the feet are clay.
Interesting that it's in declining value of the
Right.
the metal.
Right, and also it's in declining strength in terms of well, at least to the point that when you get down to the clay, you put the weakest of everything at the bottom, which is not that in and of itself gives you some interpretation because you wouldn't put something that fragile. Clay is fragile.
Clay just,
But we use that term.
yeah.
You had feet of clay. That was, and when you have feet of clay, it's gonna be a problem. You're gonna fall because you have feet of clay, right? As you looked on, a stone was cut out, not by human hands, but there's a stone, and it struck the statue on its feet, clay, and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were all broken in pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floor. So it disintegrates, right? It's not like it just comes tumbling down into huge bolt chunks and stuff. It's like it blows up into pieces because it's like chaff that'll blow away. Okay. And the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Okay, so we have this huge colossus statue, right? Head of gold, arms and chest of silver, belly and thighs of bronze, legs and a little bit of the feet of iron, and then the rest of the feet of clay. And it's this huge boulder or rock that comes out of is cut out, and it's not, if it's not by human hands, obviously then it's from God, right? I mean, that's kind of a given. Anything that's not of human hands, it's of God. So then this stone that has been cut by God comes out, and it hits this thing, and it hits it on its feet. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. And then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold are broken into pieces and became like chaff on the threshing floor. They blow away. And then the stone becomes a great mountain and fills the whole earth. Now, mine, we'll get into his interpretation in just a second. One funny thing is in mine, this commentary talks about the different ways that this is interpreted. And one of them is, I'm trying to remember which one it was. It doesn't, I can't find it right now, but it talks about the fact that this one interpretation interprets that the 10 toes are such and such and such and such. And the person that's writing the commentary says, which is quite interesting, seeing that the text doesn't even mention how many toes are on the thing, which is kind of funny that somebody decides to interpret the feet and they just interpret it automatically as having 10 toes, even though it doesn't say at all, but it doesn't even say that it has toes. I mean, it could, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of funny that it would interpret it that way. But
This, let's see. This says the gold head represents the Neo-Babylonian Empire. I have trouble reading this stuff here.
Yeah.
And no, see also that the silver chest and arms, the Medo-Persian Empire, established by Cyrus in 539 BC. The bronze belly and thighs, the Greek Empire, established by Alexander the Great, circa 330. The iron legs and feet, the Roman Empire. The toes are understood by some to represent a later confederation of states occupying the territory formerly controlled by the Roman Empire. The diminishing value of the metals from gold to silver to bronze to iron represents the decreasing power and grandeur of the rulers of the successive empires, from the absolute despotism of Nebuchadnezzar to the democratic system of checks and balances that characterized the Roman senates and assemblies. The metals also symbolize a growing degree of toughness and endurance, with each successive empire lasting longer than the preceding one.
Okay, and that's obviously us nowadays looking at that text and deciding that that's what it means. Now, that's not Daniel's interpretation or God's interpretation. That's our interpretation. And that's the one that talked about that confederation. That's the one that says there are 10 toes, and that represents the 10 whatevers of this confederation. And so it's kind of like, okay, if you say so, even though it doesn't mention that there are 10, but that's what you say it is. But that is a typical way that we interpret it, is it goes, and at that point, then Nebuchadnezzar is the goal, right? I mean, because he is the Neo-Babylonian. And then he will be replaced. The Neo-Babylonian Empire will fall to the Persians, and in your case, I think calls it Medo-Persians. And then you have Alexander the Great, and then you have Alexander the Great will fall, and then you have Rome. Is that, am I right? Is that Rome? And then and now the idea that Nebuchadnezzar is a despot, and by the time you get to Rome, they're not despots. Well, there may have been a little bit of democracy in Rome, but they're pretty despotic. Nero was a pretty bad dude. I mean, I don't know that I would label Rome a democracy. Okay, the Senate a little bit maybe, but I don't know. But what's interesting in that, and what doesn't get interpreted, is the stone. You notice that?
Yeah, there wasn't anything in here about the
Doesn't
stone.
mention the stone. Okay, we'll come to that in a little bit. Let's read what Daniel says about it, and then let's see what Daniel says. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, the king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom. Now, notice in this, King of Kings is little K's, right? King of Kings, big K's would be, we would say Christ, but that's not that's an us. That's not a them thing. I mean, Christ hasn't. There's no Christ at this point. To whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the might, and the glory. Now that's one of those that Jews believe they are God's chosen people, and that God gave them, kingdom. They gave them the Davidic kingdom and this land and all of that kind of stuff. But the idea that God would also give their enemies their kingdom and lands and power and all that kind of stuff. And there will be talk in other places even of the idea that especially Cyrus, he will replace, he'll be the first one when the Babylonians fall, that Cyrus is someone that God uses, because that he uses Cyrus to bring the people of Israel back. And I mean, I think you could make the case that God uses the Babylonians to punish Israel for what they had done when they'd gotten so far away from him, it wasn't funny. And so he slapped them down and hauled them off into exile. The idea that your enemy, that God is with you, but God isn't with your enemy. Well, maybe not. You don't know that. So in this case, he's saying, that God of heaven, my God, and especially notice, my God has given you kingdom, power, might, glory. Okay. So that you're not where you are because of you. You're not because of all of your little G's that you worship. You are where you are because of my God, my G, big G God, right? Into whose hand he has given human beings, whether they live, wherever they live, the wild animals of the field, the birds of the air, and whom he has established as ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. So Daniel's saying, you, Nebuchadnezzar, and your empire, in a sense, you're the head of gold, and God has made you that. God, you control all of it. I don't know that you could say he really is over everything, because there are other kingdoms that exist at this time that but he's the big one in their area. After you, so once you're done, after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours. It won't be as good as yours. And yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over the whole earth. Okay, and that's Alexander, right? That's who we've heard interpreted as Alexander, which Alexander's empire is huge, right? In that day and age, it's far bigger than Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know about Rome. It's bigger than Nebuchadnezzar, and it's bigger than the Persians. Whether it's bigger than Rome, I don't know exactly. I would have, because Rome goes all the way into Britain. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Most people don't realize that it goes. Hadrian's Wall is there. That the fighting against the Picts. In fact, doesn't Caesar?
They have Roman baths in England.
Caesar, yeah. I think Caesar, Julius Caesar was in England at one point in the military, and then it goes all the way into North Africa. And I don't know how big comparison, but Alexander the Great was really the first, what you would think of as ruler of the Western world. Now he did go over into India some and that way, but he didn't go all the way to far Asia, China, and that kind of stuff. So, but he's saying that bronze, the kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over the whole earth, and there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron. Just and really, when you think about the strength, if it's made well, it's the strongest. Now, if it's not made well, it cannot be strong. But gold is really soft. Gold is soft. Silver is pretty soft. Bronze is harder. I mean, that's the whole reason that it was invented, was to be able to make weapons and things like that out of bronze. They were trying to get something that was a strong enough metal. And then along came iron, and iron is the strongest. The problem is that in this is that you've melded bronze and clay, and you obviously have a problem there because clay is not strong. Okay. A fourth kingdom, which is iron. Just as iron crushes and smashes everything, it shall crush and shatter all of these. So it'll cover. It implies that Rome is over, and I think probably it is. It's as big as all of these, right? It'll control all the area. As you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, as you saw the iron mixed with the clay. Okay, so that it's a divided kingdom. So how is Rome? I'm trying to figure out, how's Rome a divided kingdom? I know it will be divided into, you have the what will be called the Byzantine Empire ultimately, that will rule out of Constantinople, and so it'll be divided east and west, and maybe that's what it's referring to. I'm not sure. As the toes of the feet are partly iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with clay, so will they mix with one another in marriage. But they will not hold together, just as the iron does not mix with clay. So and mine has a footnote. What is D? Aramaic, by human seed. They will mix with one another by human seed. So they'll have children, I guess, is what it's saying. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall this kingdom be left to another people. It shall crush all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from the mountain, not by hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. God has informed the king what shall be hereafter. The dream is certain and its interpretation trustworthy. Okay, so in a sense, then, this rock that is cut by something not human hands, but by God's kingdom on the earth. And now we will say not Jesus, not the first coming, but it would be the second coming. But it's one. So that's how, in effect, that's how this dream begins to fit into the messianic, the revelation kind of stuff. Is that when that whatever comes to earth and destroys this Colossus statue, that's the point at which God's kingdom will be set up. And so maybe that's what I find it interesting to think about, that if we interpret it the way that Susan read, right? Well, the Romans don't come about for significantly later than in fact, I mean, when Daniel was doing his thing, the only one that exists is the gold. That would be Nebuchadnezzar, right? And all the other kingdoms haven't come about yet. And so that's, I mean, if that's the actual interpretation, I mean, that's pretty spot on that it came that way. But now, if you want to look at it, if that rock coming and crushing it is the end of all things, then you kind of have to look at it differently. Because when Rome falls, you don't get the end of time, right? And if that's what Rome is, if Rome is the iron and the clay, and the rock destroys that iron, so you then can sort of start saying, well, okay, if that's it, then what could, and that's where you do get people that interpret things. They start interpreting maybe the iron was the Soviet Union, or, I mean, there are people that'll look and try to find these as kingdoms that existed through more modern history. And you know, I don't think that you can do one after the other quite the way that you do with Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. You can't do it that way, but you could probably find big ruling groups, and you could maybe include them in there. I don't know. Okay,
Could be us.
could be us. You're right. Could be us. You never know. You never know. Okay, I'm going to stop us there. We're about 5 minutes till. So we are going to stop.